Cinematic Fantastic.
Batu, Barada, Nikto.
I'll show you who I am and what I am.
By a werewolf and lives becomes a werewolf himself.
Open the pod bay doors, Hal.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to the Cinematic Fantastic Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Weatherford.
And your other host, William Weatherford.
Get ready for opinions, dad jokes,
and bad jokes
as we watch and review sci-fi and fantasy films from the classics of yesteryear to the new favorites of today.
If you wanted something to do in between seasons,
when you're missing us dearly and life feels uneven,
we'll stop on by and give you a lift. Brought you a present.
You brought you a gift.
This is a bonus episode, little bit different from the ones you know.
4 theme movies in a row. Welcome to the bonus. Thankful that you joined us. Now here's the bonus episode.
Welcome back. I love saying that. It feels so good to say that. The last time you heard from us, dear, lovely cinematic fantastic fanatic listeners, the last time we talked, we were discussing Invisible Man at the season finale of season 1. That was not that long ago to us. I don't know how long that's going to be ago for you guys that are listening out there in lovely podcast land. But as we mentioned to you before, we are in a theme month, I guess like we could call it that, of 4, count them, 4 amazing entries. I want to talk real quick. Do you mind if I talk real quick about the origin of these bonus episodes? Because I think you know what it was. Okay, it was back early on. I was talking about, I really want William to see these samurai movies, right? And I said, well, okay, samurai movies, they're not science fiction, fantasy, horror, kind of adventure. It's a stretch. So I was thinking, okay, well, maybe in between seasons, we could do bonus episodes that might not necessarily fit into science fiction, fantasy, horror, whatever. And so we came up with some themes. And so if this works out and you guys really enjoy this, well, we still want to do it regardless. But these bonus episodes, they aren't part of our season as the theme of science fiction, fantasy, horror. They're their own thing. And they kind of do revolve around a theme, so we can kind of keep them going. This theme right now that we're doing right now is
Cinematic Classics.
He comes in from the side of the frame.
I exist. Hello, it is me, William, and you obviously heard Jason. It has been many weeks, but yes, I exist. My name is William.
Yes,
and,
you do.
I have come here.
You jumped off the top rope I was like, and the theme is called "And Off the Top Rope." He comes in with the elbow.
Yeah, I'm slapping you with the chair. All right, so as Dad was about to say, this is called Cinematic Classics, as you can see from the title. It should be Cinematic Classics Month, M1931. Obviously, we're just going to piece together that first part for now. So Cinematic Classics. Why is it called Cinematic Classics, that is? So we put together 4 movies for this grouping, which is M, Citizen Kane, Night of the Hunter, and The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. And 2 in particular of those movies, namely Citizen Kane and M, are known to be widely considered the ones of the greatest movies of all time. Citizen Kane being widely considered the greatest of all time. However, in case we want to lump things into the category that, they're great, but someone might not think of them as one of the greatest movies of all time, like something like The Night of the Hunter, people would be like, why is that on the list?
I think they're really good. I think they're really good movies. They just may not be as well known, I think.
Yeah, basically, what if the movie isn't Toads the Goats? What unites them is that they are classic. We're going to leave room for other movies we might lump into this category that maybe they aren't Toads the Goats. And, there's no problem with that.
Yeah. I was thinking, okay, these are all movies that I wanted to watch with you because I enjoyed them. I had not seen Night of the Hunter. I have seen Treasure of the Sierra Madre, and I have seen M. and I did see Citizen Kane many, many years ago for a film history and criticism class.
And all 4 of these I've never seen before. Obviously, having heard of Citizen Kane and M, the other 2 haven't heard of them, but we're going to be enjoying them in this 4-part miniseries, bonus episodes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And these bonus episodes, when you download them, they'll probably just show up, they'll just say bonus or something. It'll show up in a bonus episode section of where your podcast kind of groups themselves. At least I think so on most platforms. But whenever we do season 2, those will actually be labeled as season 2. And I am really looking forward to that as well. But this is a nice little like island, kind of like when you're on a trip from one place to another and you want to stop off at a place where they have the world's largest rubber band or something like that. You're like, I got to see that. But that's not really on our way. We got to stay on the road. But it's the world's biggest rubber band ball. We got to see that. So when you take those side quests, it's a side quest. It's a Dungeons and Dragons side quest. It's not the main quest.
In this case, we are killing 4 monsters. Although they're really great, beautiful monsters. I wanna hug them so bad.
Monstrously awesome, and we're taking their pelts back to the old man who lives in the inn, and we're getting some special rubies.
That's technically called poaching, which is illegal in a ton of countries. It should
a lot of side quests are poaching, so you should feel bad about doing side quests in an RPG. So
honestly, goblins shouldn't be treated as they could easily be much more than monsters. So it's like kill 4 goblins.
Wow.
It's like, why don't you get to know them on a personal level? Maybe they have a family. Maybe
they
they
could be a whole race of people with their own culture.
Maybe they hate Mondays.
Yeah, mythology. I mean, goblins have their own, their own thing, but
maybe they do a specific ritual at a specific time, and you won't ever know until you allow them to invite you.
Maybe they're just a little bit aggressive because they've had aggression put on them so much, and if they met somebody who actually traded with them and treated them like another human being, you'd be surprised.
Just like the character we're talking about in this film.
That's kind of a stretch with
this
one.
Well, it's basically the same idea, sort of. So
we'll see. I'm curious to see your take on this. Okay,
all right.
What is this movie called?
The movie is called M, 1931, which is a really short title since it's one character. It's often shared by a couple other movies that also are one character. I think there's an S or an R. I don't know.
There is a movie called the movie. The movie, I know, it really is a true title. The movie is about a guy who gets changed into a humanoid kind of serpent and then finally turns into a snake at the end of the movie.
It sounds pretty wacky, but...
It is wacky.
So, this came out in 1931. It's a movie about a child murderer who's gone to loose... Warning. There's child murder.
It does not show the child murder, but it does hint that it happens, and it's unsettling. It doesn't have any overt violence. If somebody wants to show this to somebody who's young enough to see a movie with cursing in it, it is German with subtitles. We do recommend that you see it.
But honestly, yeah, do watch this movie. It's really great. It doesn't matter if it's German at all. Don't let that bother you at all. Literally, you will be missing out if you don't watch this movie with the original performances. They're pretty great. So, that being said, this movie is about a child murderer. His name is Hans Beckert, and he's terrorizing this city. The people are getting restless with this, murder going about, and the police are trying their very, very hardest to try and catch this dude. Just barging into people's homes without warrants, trying to search. They're trying very desperately to do this.
They're under pressure, man. They're under pressure by families. They're under pressure by the head inspector. He's under pressure from the government of the city. Yeah.
Even the criminals are also like, dude, we got to get rid of this dude. We can't even do crime anymore without being noticed because there's police everywhere and anywhere, checking everyone and anyone.
Look, here's the thing. You could have even in modern jails and prisons nowadays, if you have people that go in, they're like, oh, I robbed a place. Oh, I got picked up for drugs, or I'm in the mafia. Okay. But then 2 doors down from them is a child murderer. That guy's not going to last. He's going to get killed in the shower. I'm sorry. It's like there's almost a hierarchy or level of crimes that people will accept. Like, oh, I'll accept you're a fellow criminal. You're a murderer. Okay, you're a this, you're that. That guy over there is a child murderer. All right, well, he's done. And that has happened many times in modern history, and it is reflected in this movie.
But the plot of this movie is the criminals, they eventually, through their methods, are the first one to eventually get to Hans Beckert. They identify him with a guy. He's also kind of like a criminal beggar dude. He's just on the street, and he notices him, and he chases after him. He puts a M on his hand and slaps his coat with chalk, and that is also the poster of the movie has the big hand with the letter M on it, and that's how they identify him, and then they eventually catch him into a very climactic, very, 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 very notable, very good scene.
He escapes them and he holds himself up in some buildings that are closed. And the criminals, they actually break into the building across from there and or nearby, and they're able to kind of flush him out. And they enact their own kind of twisted justice. And it's the last scene is just, you can't take your eyes off the screen. Anyway, we'll go into more detail when we get to the plot part.
So, as with all of our podcast episodes, we're going to cover a production and a plot, which will be 2 separate sections. We'll go into the plot first, which is going to be handled by me this time. So, the director of this movie is Fritz Lang. He is known for Metropolis. He's pretty cool. That's another movie. It's like one of the first science fiction films. It's also known for being like mostly lost because they cut away of it. And fortunately, we have all of the scenes except there's like one scene of like I don't know. There's like this monk character and he's like preaching to people and they're like all kumbaya or something. But who knows? That's the one scene we don't have because it was in terrible condition. But fortunately, we've restored the entire thing.
Some of the scenes you'll be watching it, and then the scenes will look good, and then there's ones where it looks like they're in a rainstorm, like there's these white lines going down the screen, and it looks rough, but then it'll go back into normal, and it would just be great if we could just find those, the original negatives of that.
But unfortunately, they were excised. So, first of all, we have Fritz Lang, the director. He placed an advertisement in the newspaper in 1930, the year before this movie came out, about this film, his film idea for this, under the working title Mörder unter uns, which is Murder Among Us, however funny that statement might be.
Today, because of the video game, yeah.
2020. However, he got backlash for this. There's threatening letters, there's denial by the Stockton studio, which was where he wanted to place it in. So they denied it, but he went and he asked why. And the reason is because they thought, oh, well, your story seems to be having a government. Now, this government, it awfully seems like the Nazi government that's placed itself kind of recently. Now, we don't like that because it's not really a positive light on them.
He was trying to make deeper points, and if you watch the movie and kind of look for those deeper elements, you'll see them. And it does kind of reflect the world in which Nazism was starting to thrive, but it doesn't officially, like in big, bold letters, call out the Nazi Party, but it does call out the deeper things that may have underneath the Nazis. I don't understand why they would think it had anything to do with them.
It's definitely explainable.
Yeah.
However, M survived. It was eventually shot in 6 weeks at the Stocken Zeppelinhalle. Something like that.
Close enough.
The Stocken Zeppelinhalle studio, just outside Berlin. Lang made the film distributed by Neurofilm. It's a small company instead of something like UFA, which is Universum Film Aktiengesellschaft.
Not bad. You're getting better at this.
And I'm going to butcher it, okay? It's German. Just so you know, German film.
We're trying. We're trying. Best.
So basically that translates to Universal Film Public Company. Basically Universal, but Germany, which literally shares the word universal. Another thing to note is that Nero Films and Janus Films also seem to have a lot of their films in the Criterion Collection. Why is that important? Because that's the version we watched, and as we note, there is the Criterion Collection is full of a lot of movies which critics enjoy, filmophiles, and that's what they put this in, rightfully so.
Also, they're restored. A lot of Criterion stuff is they spend the time to restore it. They see it as historically significant. A lot of movies that we have there are from that era that some say they're lost and that they've been restored. It's because they're actually really good. I don't know. I'd have to have somebody come and bring me a really terrible movie that someone has actually restored, spent the time to restore. because they'll only allow him to do it if it's historically, significant.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, Janus Films, which also seems to have some of the stuff in Criterion Collection, actually owns Criterion, so that would also make sense. Janus Films is Italian, and Neurofilm is German, as we'll see. Lang would again collaborate again with Nero with the Testament of Dr. Mabuse, 1934. This would spell fate for Fritz Lang, as we'll talk about later.
That sounds very mysterious and dark.
Yes, M for mysterious.
Oh, no.
So, many titles before M were chosen, all, of course, with the murder in the name. Another thing that's interesting is Fritz Lang would interview child murderers, like in hospitals and stuff, for inspiration. He also used a couple of real criminals as the extras in this movie, especially, when you have that big climactic scene with all of the people and the criminals together. That would make sense.
There was a real serial killer who killed children in Germany. His name was Peter Kürten. He was called the Vampire of Dusseldorf, and I think he interviewed him. That
probably would make sense, but some critics and reviewers were saying that he was based on him, but Lang was denied it, saying that there were a lot of killers at the time of inception. So
wow,
why could it be that one person, Peter Kürten?
That might be true.
But funny thing is about those criminals that he hired for this movie, for being criminals in the movie. 25 extras would be arrested during shooting of this movie.
Oh my.
So the police were like, they realized there were criminals here, and they arrested a bunch of people. So that's kind of funny, especially at the end when they all get kind of arrested by the police. Who knows? That would probably be like a very realistic moment for them.
Life reflecting art, is that what they call it?
Probably. So, Lang's picture of the Berlin underworld seems to have inspiration from the Ring Verein, something like that, which shares a similarity to mafias, which is Italian roots. For instance, them providing financial support for the families of imprisoned members was inspired from reality. Also, Wikipedia notes the break-in scene in M, which is like the big part toward the end of the movie. It got inspiration from the Descanso bank break-in by the Saws brothers, although that was for theft, but it could have taken a bit of inspiration from the Saws brothers. It also notes that the Ringverein saw themselves as very respectable, very middle class. Like the Mafia, the Ringverein paradoxically portrayed themselves as a force for social order, unlike recklessness and fear spreading. So they're kind of like, we're the higher up, gentlemanly...
The gentleman thief.
The gentleman thief.
Yeah, we steal stuff, but we're not, we're not monsters. You see what I said there? It's like, we might be criminals, but we're not monsters.
That's why they call it organized crime. And mafias would be a lot kind of like that. They're very, respectable gentlemen kind of, things, although they have like a Mafian accent, which would be used a lot in movies.
You said organized. Well, very often early serial killers, when they're first starting out, are very disorganized. They're trying to figure out what they like, the victims that they like to kill, the ways in which they like to kill them, the ways in which they like to, I'm not speaking from experience. I've listened to a lot of true crime podcasts, and I had to quit because it got too dark, and it was very depressing. It was fascinating, but you're seeing the darker side of people, and I couldn't do it anymore.
So it's like, I see that man. Nah, man, just don't, please. Just live a normal life. We also get that Fritz Lang wrote that the crime scene in Germany was such compelling cinematic material that I lived in constant fear that someone else would exploit this idea before me. So he was like, I just got all this inspiration in my knuckles that I want to put in this movie.
I better do it before somebody else sees all the coolness that I do and makes a movie, And honestly...
This movie is cool.
Not better than M.
Yeah. Germany at the time, or as it was kind of fading out by 1931.
The Weimar Republic.
The Weimar Republic, right. It also had parties arguing over their country's capital punishment system, just like this movie. This movie, for those who don't know, it deals a lot with, the justice system and humans and society. We live in a society. Nah.
You know,
So
well, both the Joker and this movie have a killer that they wonder if they need to put him into an asylum or not, if that's the best place for them.
yeah, it's just like this movie. People are arguing, kill the beast. Some are like, no, put him in the insane asylum. Put him in
Arkham, yeah,
Arkham Asylum. You get what I mean.
But what if he gets out? There's a lot of those kind of arguments being laid out, and it's really compelling. It leaves you a lot to think about.
There's just a big ideology of, what if their minds are they're damaged, and that's the cause of all the root of, all of their killings, that it manifests out. What if they can't help it? Just note, this was 1931, okay? This was the infancy of the sound era. This was Fritz Lang's first sound film that he ever did, and it's really amazing. Best of Germany.
That's like somebody, their first baseball game, knocking it out of the park on every time they hit.
Yeah.
It's like he goes, I'm going to try to do sound, and he kills it. You know what I'm saying?
It's like, it's like going down to sit down. It's like, okay, I'm going to roll a D20, and it's going to land one
critical
20
hit.
times, and then it literally does that. So, yeah, he was a really great director.
I don't think this movie has like how we talked about King Kong in 33 had a soundtrack that you could almost kind of listen to the soundtrack without watching the movie and know exactly what scene you were on and what they were doing in the movie. It was all the motifs and everything. But this movie
has none of that.
But wait, it does use sound, but in a way that enhances the scenes. Whistling or bouncing a ball.
Oh, there's tons of good scenes about that. Like, it uses a lot of sounds, outside of view. Some examples, when a car beeps at Elsie, who's a little girl we'll meet in the plot, off screen before passing by visibly. That's obviously a use of sound off screen. When Hans is hiding in the storage room, while the criminals are, absolutely demolishing the places with, like, axes.
Like pickaxes and
jackhammers, just like, they're decimating the whole place and trashing the whole place, entirely off screen, while you can see his scared face as he's, waiting in the shadows, to not be discovered. That contributes a lot to the thriller that this is. This movie's thriller. It's pretty cool. There's another example, when the blind balloon seller, he hears the really bad organ grinder, and he covers his ears. When he does that, the sound mutes, and it also unmutes at will when he uncups and cups his ears, respectively.
Oh, like a POV, kind of a POV shot for your ears.
Yeah, and another one is that they overlay audio of two different scenes sometimes. Like, for instance, near the beginning, there's a crowd in front of the newspaper. Someone starts to read it just for, there's a group of bar-goers in the next sort of location scene. And he's reading the newspaper instead of the guy who's reading the newspaper over there. So it's overlaying the future film's audio onto the previous shots visuals.
I've heard a YouTuber video editor, he called that a J-cut.
It kind of superimposes across the locations. I find that really interesting.
Yeah, and you see it all the time in modern film, and it's these movies like M that started it all, revolutionized it, did it well, and we see the effects of what they're doing.
Both sound and the visuals are used to tell a story as compared to just the visuals. And normally, people aren't used to this stuff. They're just like, hey, it's a movie, I'm gonna watch the movie. But, like, the sound is important.
We take it for granted.
We do take a lot of things for granted.
And then when you go back and watch silent movies, it really wakes you up to how important
just
all that
watch all of the offerings of 1931, and you'll realize... in fact, actually, we kind of did that with 1932.
Yeah, we did.
So, watch all those, and then watch this film, and you realize that Fritz Lang is so ahead of his time, just with a lot of things.
There's a lot of revolutionary stuff here in the 30s. I mean,
just like how the people of the city are, revolutionizing against their government. Abolitionism, just absolutely going forth. So... this movie eventually released. I know, it's impossible. How I didn't know it released. How can it release? But yeah, for those who don't know, it did release. As we have it right now. And premiered in Berlin at the UFA Palace at the Zoo, in a version lasting 1 hour 57 minutes. The Criterion Collection, as we were talking about, they released the Criterion Collection 1 hour and 49-minute version, using prints for the same period from the
Actually, it's pronounced cinematic Swiss.
It's Swiss, and the Netherlands Film Museum. Criterion Collection version is the one that we watched on HBO Max.
And also, I think we've seen copies out there on the YouTubes if you want to find that. I have something sparked in my mind. You said they showed it at a place that had a zoo, and I was like, didn't we have another movie that was German made that showed at a film thing that had a zoo next door? Was it Nosferatu?
Yeah, Nosferatu and M have been like the only German films we've really covered, except for Caligari, obviously, and Der Golem.
Yeah, exactly.
It's been a while since we've covered German films, which is really interesting.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're probably not going to see the majority of these are going to be American films, and then we're going to see a good handful of Japanese film. We're going to see some British science fiction movies. Kind of in there, but unfortunately we're not going to see a lot of German movies. But hey, a lot of those directors that did make film in Germany, they did move out and do Hollywood pictures. So, we may see some of those directors.
Yeah, so the film was later released in the U.S. In April 1933 by Feremco Pictures. After 2 weeks, Feremco committed the great sin of replacing subs with dubs. Peter Lorre, the actor for Hans Beckert,
excellent
actor. Chef's kiss.
Wasn't this
his third movie?
And then, of course, I think his first English speaking was The Man Who Knew Too Much. Yeah, I've seen that. That one's really good. And then of course he got well known. Was he a comedy guy early on, and then he switched and did something more dramatic, and he got well known for that, or I don't know.
Yeah, and then he kind of went back more to comedy. But Peter Lorre, he reprised himself in this English dub version, having already learned English from fleeing Germany. As we'll see, he fled Germany in 1934.
Was he part Jewish?
Well, Fritz Lang was like part Jewish, but they both fled Germany.
Either he was Jewish or he was pro-Jewish and left.
Yeah, so it was partially reshot with some actors. Peter Lorre, he's redoing his acting and also dubbing over himself in foreign languages. This was all without Fritz Lang's involvement, though. So this English dub is really interesting. From looking at it, well, they replace everyone with like British-sounding people, and there's a lot of moments where they fade from a scene where they're looking at a German text. They fade into a scene that's kind of equivalent, but also not, obviously. You can tell that it's a fade into a new thing, where they have English text instead. You can see this at the beginning, where there's this iconic shot. They pan over to this, the newspaper telling about the murder and the bounty and how terrible he is, while the murderer, Hans Beckert, is silhouetted against it as he asks Elsie Beckman how pretty her ball is. But in the English dub, they fade into this, like a whiteboard. It kind of looks like a whiteboard, honestly. It's this flat surface, and Elsie, in the German, she's bouncing a ball against this wanted poster, this news poster, and they fade into an equivalent scene with the English text while they have this ball from another angle bouncing onto it. And it's like, it looks so fake, it looks so bad. So that, to answer the question of, okay, it's a German film, how are you going to use clips of the movie when it's not in a language I can't even understand? I personally will dub over the audio, obviously making it so you can hear the original performances, as that is the good thing. Don't watch the English dub, watch the original, it's really good for the performances, but I'll dub over it myself with the English words. It'll be pretty interesting to try, but it'll be pretty sweet, and you'll be able to hear in the final scene of the movie his just absolutely raw performance of Hans Beckert.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but I would say this, many times when people try to do an American version of a movie that was so iconic, many times it takes away from it. Although the benefit is that it gets a wider release because a lot more people are willing to see it.
Also, the first moments of the film, which is really ominous. There's like a child. They're playing like a little game. They're outing people. With the man in black's cleaver. Strikes so true, he'll make mincemeat out of you. In the English version, they changed the man in black to the Chinaman. Oof.
Yikes! Yeah, oof,
Yikes.
yikes! Yeah, yikes! There's an oof, yikes moment.
The Chinaman.
Here comes the China man, creepy feet.
Well, also, do you think that the reason why, with things going on in Germany about the time that they were starting to do this, do you think people were like, I'm hearing about this Nazi thing, and this Germans, I don't know, and then that's why they decided to do a lot of that.
Germany was in a lot of hot water during the Nazi regime in Germany, especially with all of the censorship and being like, are you trying to be against the Nazi regime? With this specific movie. In this case, M survived, even though, as I said previously, the Stocken studio questioned them against this with this reasoning. The reception of the movie. The initial response had Variety saying M was a little too long. Cutting could have been done. Graham Greene said it was like looking through a microscope through which the tangled mind is exposed, laid flat on the slide. Love and lust, nobility and perversity,
right.
Hatred of itself, and the despair jumping at you from the jelly.
I like his review.
It's a pretty odd review.
It's very evocative. I do like, though, if you listen to somebody saying that the movie is a little long, they might be right that some things could be edited out, but the thing is, though...
Don't. It uses the length of the scenes when unnecessarily so, and it's just sitting in silence at stuff for effect. It's honestly for atmosphere, and so that you focus on it, instead of, whipping past it like it's nothing, like most people, like American Westerns or something would do. This movie decides to linger on its scenes. It's trying to tell you there's something important here that we have to say for this.
You're marinating in the juices. It's slowly cooking you to death.
Another thing that's interesting is that this movie, in fact, recorded a ton of their scenes without the sound at all. So normally when it'd just be, you'd hear the sound of someone stepping in a lot of scenes, they just didn't record the audio. So there's just paralyzing silence met through you. And there's just silence. There's no even music. He's just being surrounded. It's so ominous. There's not even any footstep noises either. They don't even record anything. Now, this was probably to save money, but honestly, I feel like it's to great effect of just this wall of silence instead of, just hearing, noise or like sounds of footsteps and all sorts of stuff like that. So silence as well as sound is also used for effect as well, because the absence of sound is also sound in and of itself. I believe.
Wow, that's a Facebook quote right there. That's
that's a Facebook quote.
That's an Instagram quote for the day.
But nowadays, people recognize it for being really good. In fact, 100% Rotten Tomatoes. The site's critics' consensus reads a landmark psychological thriller with arresting images, deep thoughts on modern society, and Peter Lorre in his finest performance. I would agree. So
I would too. Also, I found out that some would say it's the first serial killer movie ever made. That's untrue.
I think that would go to Alfred Hitchcock. Hitchcock's The Lodger, I think.
Yeah, The Lodger. Yeah, exactly.
So we have a Mark Savlov of Austin Chronicle awarded the film 5 stars, calling it one of the greatest of all German expressionistic films. German expressionistic. Now, that evokes kind of like a more German expressionism films, as we've seen with such as the Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is honestly one of the greatest displays of German expressionism. It's more painterly, more like a fabricated kind of worldview that's like twisted and kind of painterly as they painted all the scenes. But this has no painting.
The shadow, though, they're
trying to say the shadow. I think.
Yeah. The use of shadow and light and angle and all that, I think is still expressionistic, but
Yeah,
I
the
think
cinematography, 5 stars, way ahead of its time for 1931.
it's very good. And like I said, the cornerstone of the entire movie is definitely the last scene, the courtroom scene, as I might call it.
As people would call it, a kangaroo court, although obviously the word kangaroo sounds a bit more humorous than the situation calls for, unfortunately. But critic Roger Ebert added M to his great movies list, calling relatively reserved dialogue as a critical factor in its success. I would say so. There's a lot of times when there's dialogue, but then there's sometimes where there's silence, and then there's sometimes where you're supposed to be reading the text that they do. For instance, there's this small little scene of the report that was handed into the inspector, and he's kind of underlining it about the red pencil, the mahogany table or windowsill or something.
Yeah.
He did correct an error though, which is a character little thing where he's like, oh, there's an error in the German word. I thought that was a bit funny. He also said, what I sense is that Lang hated the people around him, hated Nazism, and hated Germany for permitting it. Fritz Lang is kind of against Nazism, is what it said.
I would say so. He's, I think he leaves us with questions that he doesn't fully answer.
Yeah, there's no answer to the end of this movie.
I sometimes I like those, because sometimes I don't, but sometimes I do, where it's fulfilling to really just kind of let it like a piece of candy you have in your mouth. You kind of roll it around and taste the flavor of it and really think and let it kind of sit in your brain and kind of go, what would you do? Or what do you think they're trying to say there?
And oftentimes in 1931, they would not be presented with this question. Even in 1941, as we'll cover in Citizen Kane, they did not really receive philosophical questions. Really, they watched a movie and they were like, "Oh, cool, it's a movie." They weren't asked something personally. It didn't have an open ending as much as M did, which is pretty interesting. So, yeah, this movie it was Fritz Lang's favorite, regarded one of the greatest films of all time widely by most people, including me. I think it's really great.
I would say it's one of the top. I would say so.
Yeah, it was voted the best German film of all time by the Association of German Cinemath. Not pronouncing that. It's even listed in the 1001 movies you should see before you die. So see it right now, or else you're gonna die.
Yeah, you're gonna hear somebody whistling in the Hall of the Mountain King, like a couple feet behind you,
with his cleaver's blade so true, he'll make mincemeat out of you. So the film is also referenced in the song "In Germany Before the War," which is funny because this is Germany Before the War, by Randy Newman and his album Little Criminals.
Randy Newman, of course, he did the music for Toy Story.
Yeah,
You've Got a Friend in Me, and
You Got a Friend in Me. You got a pretty balloon.
Oh,
What's your name? I'm gonna kill you.
No.
No, Woody, don't do that.
No, anyway. Woody, no.
Who said your job was to think, Spring Wiener?
Why, I just thought that
use this vast reserve of brain power to consider this for a moment. If it wasn't for me, Andy wouldn't pay any attention to you at all. In fact, my sketchy friend, you would have been hauled away to Goodwill a long time ago, so shut your mouth and get them off the bed.
Anyway, a scene from the movie was used in the 1940 Nazi propaganda film, The Eternal Jew, which means the Jew was eternal and they couldn't defeat it, I guess.
Yeah, there also was, I think, as remember in Der Golem, there was this callback to this immortal Jew, the wandering Jew, and that was a stereotype. You're taking a people and giving them this mythical status of they're just going to drag us down, so we have to get rid of them. Ultimately, that brings in mind an aspect of this movie. It's something called utilitarianism, talked about originally in the 1800s by a guy named Jeremy Bentham, and his whole point was that you have to do what is the best for the most people.
Especially for this movie, there's like people going, kill him so that he doesn't bother us again. Some people are going, save him.
Where does that end? Where does
that end? People are just like, do you help the one person, the one sickly, versus the entire people who want him gone? so they don't have to deal with them anymore.
Oh, also, the thing is, utilitarianism, if you don't watch it, can definitely feed into it. And if you think about it, Nazism, their whole thing was, the Jew, the Roma, any of those kind of people, we have to kill them because they're like this disease on society, and if we don't get rid of them, they'll drag us all down. And also the other thing too, the people who are mentally challenged or mentally quote infirm, or people who are the elderly, or people who are handicapped, physically challenged, I guess is a better word. Those would be horrible to us. We would look at that and go, that's terrible. You're looking at my friend and you're saying that he needs to be killed because he's dragging society down. But that's utilitarianism taken to its ultimate end.
That's probably why they'd see the government in this movie as a Nazi government. So there was a 1951 remake of M, in fact, which I don't really know why, but it's set in Los Angeles as compared to, I don't know what city it is in, but it's a awful big city, probably Berlin. Unfortunately, it could be so. Which Nero Films had Seymour Nembenzel produced and Joseph Losey directed for Columbia Pictures. Pretty interesting. So Lang, he'd once told a reporter, "People tell me why I do not remake M in English. I have no reason to do that. I said all I had to say about that subject in the picture. Now I have other things to say." So he's just like, that's why the English dub, he wouldn't have done it if he could, if he had control over the world.
No, and he didn't. I think he died before the remake came out, right?
Even still, the remake was directed by Joseph Losey, starred David Wayne. Losey said he watched it, but he never referred to it. He only repeated a single shot.
Ugh.
Like, just a couple of shots. He's just like, okay, I'll go off of these 1 or 2 shots. That's kind of dumb, man.
I think David Wayne would later play a character. He played the Mad Hatter in Batman, the 1960s series. David Wayne. So that's how I know him.
Yeah.
And we will do the Batman 1960s movie later on.
Yeah, so let's get on to the cast. So first I want to talk about Fritz Lang. He's the director of this movie. A pretty interesting thing is his 1929 film, Woman in the Moon. It didn't do so well as much as Metropolis also didn't really do so hot as well. He showcased someone going to space in a multi-stage rocket, which pioneered the concept of a rocket launch pad, which was a rocket, standing upright against a tall building, before launch, having been slowly rolled in place. And the rocket launched the countdown clock, the famous, T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 launch. I find that really interesting because
he's ahead of his time again.
He's ahead of his time again. He made this stuff in this movie 40 years in advance. Even still, Leonardo da Vinci apparently came up with like machine guns and early helicopter designs like 500 years ago. So
right,
great minds think alike, or great minds are great minds, basically.
Right. Yeah.
So, again, he had lots of trouble with the Nazi government due to suspicions toward Metropolis, M, and the final straw being The Last Testament of Dr. Mabuse, which had Nazi phrases spoken by the villain. And the characters, comparatively regular people to the government, the state, they had him violently overthrowing the state to Mabuse's orders, I think. So that's pretty interesting. And so they're like, this is the final straw. You are against us. We don't like you. Again, he was also half Jew because his mother was a Jew, but she went to Catholicism, so who knows? He wasn't really raised in the Jewish mindset. So due to all these factors, he fled Germany in 1936. Now let's get a little bit down to Peter Lorre. He is the lead actor. He's Hans Beckert. He does a lot of good for this film. He plays the role really well, and you can feel pity for the murderer, which is something that people ordinarily wouldn't really do in movies. They have the murderer. He's just a murderer, kill him, kill the beast. But you actually feel pity for him regardless of all of his actions, but you still consider his actions as being terrible, which is the dilemma in this movie, kind of like the train dilemma, the multiple people versus the one person, which do you hit with your train track. So M was Peter Lorre's first major role, boosted his career, even though he was typecasted as a villain for years afterward, especially in Columbia's Crime and Punishment. Because get it? Because murder. There's a murder in that movie.
Is that Leo? That's not Leo. That's not Tolstoy. Who did Crime and Punishment?
Was it like
Dostoevsky?
Dostoevsky? I don't know. I'm trying my best, okay?
We're giving it a shot.
I'm trying my best not to pronounce anything because I'm just butchering it today. All right.
I remember him for playing like foreign agents, like spies and bad guys, and he also played kind of other kind of criminal characters. He was in a movie called The Maltese Falcon.
Yes, honestly, perfect. That was that was like a film noir. That was the first film noir, or the second film noir.
It was one of the first.
One of the first.
And the Maltese Falcon has Humphrey Bogart.
So he worked with Humphrey Bogart in the Maltese Falcon, in Casablanca as well.
He was
with Fred Astaire in Silk Stockings, 1957, which is pretty interesting.
I think that was a comedy.
Yeah, that was like a sort of comedy musical sort of thing. He was also in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, 1954, which is on Disney Plus. I, in fact, watched it, but I was rewatching it for him. Honestly, seeing him speaking English and also being old, I'm kind of not used to that, so I'm watching it. Well, in this movie, in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, he's a side character, so he's kind of doing his best. He doesn't really do too good job, but
fine.
He's fine. He's a side character. That's all he booked for.
Who else was in Casablanca that we've done movies of?
Fay Wray?
Conrad Veidt.
Conrad Veidt, yes, right.
So Conrad Veidt, Humphrey Bogart, and Peter Lorre.
He was also on Stranger of the Third Floor, which, as I was saying, the very first recognized film noir. The second would be The Maltese Falcon. Honestly, perfect. He was like in one of the first film noirs, which is really interesting. He was also in You'll Find Out, 1940, with Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi. So he was with the two stars of the Universal monster films.
He was also in a movie with Vincent Price, another of those kind of actors who shows up in a lot of those creepy movies and has that very recognizable voice. Was it The Terror?
I don't know.
Maybe in The Raven or something. He was in a movie with Vincent Price. I think Roger Corman directed. You know what? My memory is all awash. So if you keep listing his movies, I'm sure we'll get to that.
So yeah, that's where we're at our ends, at our world's ends, with the production of M. And since we don't have too much time, we'll move on to the plot. In the next section.
Yes, but what I will tell you is that we'll try to cover this as much as we can and give it as much depth as we can, but there's no substitute to finding this movie and watching it. We will
dub over with English for the clips that we'll have in this episode. That'll be something that you'll have to be used to for watching this podcast, but honestly, if it's in German, do not let that stop you. It's an amazing movie. There's great cinematography, great story, great use of sound and silence and camera, and the setting is honestly really great. You'll be hooked into this one to an extreme level. I was, honestly. But it also, because of the lingeringness of the movie, it'll lower your blood pressure. It also did with mine, so... But do not let it being in a different language stop you. I mean, there's a ton of other great movies as well that are in different languages, like Bicycle Thieves. That one's Italian, Janus Films. So that one's also entirely in Italian, so don't let that stop you. Go watch that movie. If you have the capacity to be able to read very fluently, then just watch the movie. I mean, you can do it. Power through. It's a really great movie. Don't let the language barrier stop you from watching it. Don't let it stop you from seeing it. Don't honestly, it doesn't really matter. I mean, you can glance down at the subtitles, but still watch the movie. See, it's easy.
Yeah, you can do it. So here's the thing, though. I think a lot more people nowadays, a lot wider variety of people are accepting of that, and I would point out a couple things like Korean soap operas and dramas. Those are all subtitled. people really got into Squid Game, and Squid Game was subtitled. So think about that.
Animes are also subtitles.
Anime. Yeah. Although I will tell you, sometimes anime is dubbed well, but most of the time
the subs
are better because you can hear
the original Japanese actors' performances.
Original Nani. You don't want to hear somebody go like, "What?" He's like, "Nani." See, I'm already doing it. You know, it's like the expression of the original actor. You know, they worked so hard.
I mean, even still in this final scene, as we'll see, like Peter Lorre, Fritz Lang just absolutely. He almost like was to the degree of torturing him during this final scene to get this emotive rawness. He pushed him down those stairs. There's just one little part of the final scene where he falls down the stairs, and he pushed him down literally like thousands of times, almost, probably like at least 100, so that he'd just be crying out to stop, as much as he would for this actual crowd.
Ich will hinaus! Ich will hinaus! Lasst mich doch raus! 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 Mich hier festzuhalten! Recht! Dass man mich vor ein ordentliches Gericht stellt!
There are two instances there's a lot of other ones I could think of, but there's two instances, like, I think that Akira Kurosawa, who directed some of the samurai movies we're going to see, he actually would shoot real arrows in the direction of some of these soldiers and actors, and it would wake them up, you know, like, oh crap. Also, in the movie The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick, who was infamously very punishing of his actors, he would do a take. He did a take with one actress so many times that actually I think that her mind kind of broke a little bit, and she later the issues that she had later in her life, she says that was a very traumatizing experience for her, and it shows. She's losing it in the movie, so that may be the actress losing it in real life. Anyway, wow, we're really making everybody not depressed now. So anyway, we're going to talk about the plot. We're going to go into that.
And we're also going to talk about what we liked about this movie, because everyone's wondering, okay, I've heard a little bit about this movie. I'm possibly interested in watching this for myself, which honestly I do recommend. But tell us more, William and Jason, about why is this movie so good in depth, and we'll try and do that.
We're going to plumb those depths. We're going to take this movie. We're going to trap
We're going to hide in the corner of a storage room and wait for the criminals to stop making their sounds in our off screen.
We're going to take this movie and take it down to a cellar, and we're going to interrogate it along with all the victims of this movie, and no, that's terrible. You know, these things we're trying to do where sometimes they work and sometimes they don't, and you have to watch us kind of just struggle like a bug underneath a
shoe.
A shoe.
Bless you.
Bless you too. We will see you soon for the second half of M by Fritz Lang. All right, see you soon.
Bye. Welcome to the podcast. It is I, William, and Jason, my father, doing a podcast where we talk about a movie about society, and also made by a great director. Honestly, he's just one of the best directors out there. I think he even inspired a little bit of Alfred Hitchcock stuff, actually. You know, his thrillers do seem to be very influential for the Alfred Hitchcock stuff.
He's the precursor. I mean, he took, some of those elements of suspense and darkness and tension.
And he mixed them with his ideas of, society and how government should work, especially with how does justice work,
What does justice look like?
Justice for one man is injustice for another man. Then how do you deal with that?
It's also who gets to say.
And I mean, Metropolis also kind of explores society, except with classism. sort of
classism,
thing.
yeah,
Even
exactly.
in this movie, we do get kind of a classism thing. But yeah, we're getting a little off topic.
We're getting ahead of ourselves just a little bit, but I think as we unpack it, as we peel open this onion, and get to the deeper elements, we're gonna see those kind of peek out as we go. But
so therefore, it's an ogre?
It's an ogre. And this movie, you can just watch it on a surface level and get something from, both the suspense, the tension, the character, the drama.
But there are great themes to this one.
And it especially helps if you understand, that this is post-World War I Weimar Germany, and how it was developing and
how movies were generally at the time.
Yes.
It's just uncomparable.
Well, knowing about the history of Germany at this time and what Fritz Lang was possibly trying to say actually makes it a little bit more of a deeper film. But you can watch it on a surface level and still enjoy it.
I mean, since it's German, honestly, as we said, don't let that bother you. If you have a bilingual girlfriend or something, maybe knows a little bit of German, invite her or him. Who knows? You might have a boyfriend. Depends on gender. But yeah, my father is on the plot of this movie.
I'm making a plan. I'm making a plot.
He's orchestrating a crime.
Orchestrating a heist, an idea heist, as we kind of, steal into this plot and pull out nuggets of information and run away, without the cops knowing.
So obviously, what you can tell from this movie, it first starts on a black screen. It's black. There's no sound at all. But then there's sound. But there's no visuals. What do you mean? But there is sound. So the sound kind of has like a more independent use than the visuals in order to tell a story. In this case, what is it, Father?
It is a circle of children, and they're playing this game. It's kind of like, I'm not quite sure what it means, but it's something that they invented themselves. And there's a little girl, like a little blonde girl in the middle, and she's pointing at each one of the kids one by one. And she sings this song where she goes, "Just you wait, it won't be long. The man in black will soon be here. With his cleaver's blade so true, he'll make mincemeat out of you." I guess mincemeat is like ground beef.
For this first shot, we get a pan upwards and to the left to this wide awning where you have this the mother or like, I don't know, a maid or something. Who knows? It's not very specific. I think it's actually the servant.
So she's kind of coming against them, going, "Why are you singing that song? It's so morbid. It's dark. I mean, that's unnecessary."
But yeah, this pan. That's when you realize, okay, this is unconventional, because it's positioned in a way so that it pans, and you can see, the 3D dimensionality of it. Comparatively, you would be, facing the front, usually in 1931 and such, but in this, you get three-dimensionality. That's one of the things I like about this movie.
Yeah, a lot of the innovations of the more European directors, I think that started leaking in slowly into kind of the American style. And the American style, in some ways it's kind of plain and very straightforward, and in other ways they kind of are trying to stretch their creative muscles, and I think that's where you get those nice pan that just goes through the whole hall,
But I know, but it pitches upwards, so you can get the vertical positioning of the camera looking up.
It's probably a crane shot.
Probably a crane shot, maybe. But that's just what I like about this movie. There's, vertical positioning. As we'll see in some of the next shots, there's this shot down the stairs, and there's multiple shots like this.
When Fritz Lang puts something on frame and he does it real close up, it's for a reason. When he does it, medium shot, it's for a reason. It's not just because it looks good, it's because he's trying to say something too. There's some shots where he maintains a distance from the subject, and so what he's trying to say is, the closer we are to something, the more intimate it gets. The more we kind of start to feel what the person feels. But if we're distant, we're kind of like, we can keep it at arm's length.
And that's just distance. There's a ton more that you can dig into.
It's all about, what is he showing at a distance? What is he maintaining distance on? and what is he showing in supreme close-up. So anyway, so she's hauling a heavy load of laundry up the stairs, and she's delivered to this woman who we find out is Elsie Beckman's mother, and we figure out who Elsie Beckman is shortly. But she's really exhausted. They both are, and they also are talking about this specter of this vicious predator, this murderer that is actually murdering. It's not just a kid's song. It is actually a murder going on, and they don't know what to make of it.
And you could just feel as she's walking up those stairs, and she's like, oh boy, this is heavy. She's just like walking, like trudging through because it's very heavy. And it's just like, from then you realize it's a slower, more lingering kind of film. When I say it lowers your blood pressure earlier, it will.
Life is hard and it's tedious. You have this thought that her mother has done this every time. This is a routine. She's always awaited her kid returning from school. Kids would get off school about lunchtime, a little bit before lunchtime. I was thinking that wasn't home from school for good. That was just coming home for lunch, and then they go back out again to school, and then they come back. So I guess because they don't have cafeterias in school at this time, the parent makes the food.
Yeah, there are parents waiting outside for their children. Notice that they're wearing, fur coats, and they have furs on their necks and kind of that stuff. So you can see that they're kind of the more richer people.
Yes.
Waiting for their children at the Geimenschule.
So the cuckoo clock, it rings 12 o'clock for lunch. Elsie Beckman is walking home from school, and she's bouncing a ball. And it takes no time at all before she is finding herself in harm's way because she's absentmindedly she stumbles out into the busy street. And it shows how vulnerable children are. She's barely capable of looking both ways before she steps in traffic. And of course, somebody does stop her. So it shows that, if not for, some of the adults, that this could happen. So she's bouncing a ball, and she bounces it on this morbid wanted poster news thing. And it reads, 10,000 marks reward. Who is the murderer? Little Kurt Klowitzki and his sister Clara have been missing since June 11th. Evidence leads us to believe that the children were victims of a crime similar to that committed last fall against the During siblings.
And then right after you get to see a bit of this for a couple seconds, then walks in, silhouetted, the murderer himself. This is a famous shot, and I really like this shot as well. There are a ton of great shots. Even still, the opening shot, you've got this, the shot kind of, where she's kind of walking up. I don't know, somewhere sandwiched in there, there's a shot of it looking like down the stairs. Like you can see all the way down it. It's positioned vertically. And that's something, again, I said I like about this movie, the vertical positioning. You can make it face downwards. That's amazing.
And, of course, the shadow enters in. And it's it's large, so it's very threatening. It's cast on the poster. It's a man in a coat and a fedora, which, if you think about it, everyone wears that. It's almost like how you have these killers in these movies back in the day. Back in when I was younger, they always would have like a hockey mask or a burned, scarred face, and that's not true of real monsters. They look just like us. They dress just like us, and they talk just like us. There's no difference from us because we are monsters.
Except for Peter Lorre's, famous, kind of baby-looking face. It does kind of look a bit like a baby.
but that kind of shows that he's harmless, and
it's very unique.
I'm childlike. You know what I'm saying? So he says, "What a pretty ball you have there. What's your name?" She says, "Elsie Beckman." So that's where you see, okay, what's going on here? This is kind of creepy. So it's 12:20 now, and some kids start coming in the building. Mrs. Beckman asks them about Elsie, and did Elsie come with you? And they say no. Now you see this shadowy man from behind. He's buying Elsie a strange balloon, and it has a cartoonish yet strange look. It looks like a child. Even the balloon does. And he's whistling in the Hall of the Mountain King from Peer Gynt by Edvard Grieg.
And that tune is very ominous because it builds up and up into the da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Here's the thing, Peter Lorre, who plays Hans Beckert, he could not whistle. It's Fritz Lang whistling instead. Also, many times when Fritz Lang films close-up shots of a character's hands, it's his own he's filming.
This would be something that Fritz Lang would often do, especially with the hands thing. I think there was a little bit of controversy with, I think there was a film he made called Manhunt or something.
Oh, is that the one where the assassin...
He almost shoots Hitler.
Yeah.
At the beginning, and then apparently people have most theorized, and it's probably correct, is that it's Fritz Lang's hands in the small shot of him preparing to shoot.
The character doesn't shoot Hitler. He just kind of like gives a little mock salute, like, I could have shot you. Yeah, like he could have.
This shows Fritz Lang's stance on Nazism.
It's a hint. Yeah, it's definitely a hint. So later on, this whistle is going to be used to identify him to those who seek him. Like John Williams' theme, the dun.
Jaws.
The whistle kind of replaces him. It tells us when he's going to kill and when he has been thwarted, blocked, or stymied. So
it also is later used, especially in a scene where he's just trying to fight his desires to kill.
He's being stymied, yeah.
And then he starts whistling again while he's just groping his face. He's just like, oh, I just can't. It's, showing the struggle within him, and whenever he's thinking about it. Even when, he's just staring into a store, and, he senses that there's a kid in the reflection all the way around the corner.
With the spoons and the silver and the metal.
So basically, Elsie, she's not returning home, okay? Her mother... She's prepared the dinner table all for her. She's wrapped together like a napkin. But then she's looking out the window and she's calling for a child. And this is a very striking scene where there's just empty wall of silence between every Elsie. And it shows, like an attic and like a place where they're hanging clothes. And then finally the dinner table she didn't come to. And there's weight in this. Even the opening moments, there's a ton of weight.
It's unsettling. It really is. And if I'm of course a father, and anybody can look at this and kind of go, oh, and feel for them. But it's different when you're a parent watching something like this. You can definitely understand.
But then the ball, it rolls away, and the balloon, it like curves over and flies away. The electric lines, or
it gets stuck in power lines, right? So it's very clear that the shadowy whistling man, who we don't see his face yet, he was the killer and Elsie was the victim. So Fritz Lang, he uses his movies many times to explore complex social dynamics, like of the rapidly modernizing society, things getting moving fast. Whereas the science fiction movie Metropolis, it was trying to pose a series of what ifs about society because it's the future, of course. M acts like a piece of journalism. It's like it's a reflection of a modern sensibility. I mean, we live in a world right now where there are cars and there are trains and there are kids going to public school and there are child killers. That could be now. There are criminals. There are police officers. All those things exist now. You wouldn't have to do very much at all to update this for a modern time, but you don't have to because Fritz Lang already did that. It's timeless. But Metropolis, it's almost like fairy tale, But with M, it's very like this could be.
So, the next scene we get Hans Becker. He's writing to the newspaper, and he's trying to advertise that I'm gonna continue killing people because I'm not done yet. I've found a new victim, and everyone is just constantly scared of him because he's like, oh, Elsie's dead. What's going to be next? He's even writing to the press to get his publication out there.
This reminds me of many times I've looked into true crime and stuff like that, and I looked into a famous murderer called the Zodiac Killer, and he taunted the newspapers. He would write ciphers and taunting letters, and he wanted the newspaper to post them, and if they didn't, it's like he would probably do something bad. It's very much so. It's almost like a god complex that you do this. Now, he said, but it's him. You have this thought that it's him because he's talking about murdering, and he's writing,
and he's whistling.
Oh, that's true. So in the letter it says, because the police have not published my first letter, I'm writing today directly to the newspapers. So he sent something to the police and they didn't publish it. So he's writing directly to the newspaper to have them publish it. Okay, so it says, continue your investigations. Everything will happen just as I have told you, but I have not yet finished. the news then says, the terror in our town has found a new victim. Certain evidence leads us to believe that the murderer is the same one who has already killed 8 children. Some businesses are, some business people are shown, and they're reading the story.
Oh, I thought they were just barmen, but I didn't know that they were specifically business people.
Well, they could be business people.
It's fairly ambiguous because everyone is smoking here.
Yes, of course.
Certain evidence leads us to believe that this is the same murderer who has already claimed 8 victims from among our city's children. We must emphasize once again that it is now more than ever every mother and father's sacred duty to alert their children to the ever-present danger and the friendly guise it is likely to assume. A little candy, a toy, an apple can suffice to lure a child to his or her doom.
That reminds me of like back in the 80s when I was a kid. There was this rumor that twisted people would put razor blades in apples, and kids would like bite into them and
kind of like Snow White, except Saw.
Yeah. Right.
So it's like I lodged a razor blade inside your neck, and you have to reach inside of your own neck and pull it out in 5 minutes before you do. I haven't even watched that, obviously.
No,
but the format,
don't.
The format
it's
is
torture. It's just torture stuff, you know. For it's.
Why do
so
people even like that or make that anyway?
I don't know.
This is a much better movie. So
yes, of course it is. So everybody, this is where you start seeing everybody is anxious over this. It's not just something parents are concerned about and they're going to go about their daily lives. No. Everybody's anxious.
Even the government is like searching for every tiny little clue in order to get to this mystery.
Right, and it is also heightened by the police's failure to apprehend a suspect.
Anxiety among the general public is heightened by the police's failure to apprehend a suspect. But the police are faced with the almost impossible task of catching a criminal who's left not the slightest clue behind. Who is the murderer? What does he look like? Where is he hiding? No one knows him, yet he is among us. Anyone sitting next to you could be the murderer.
Anybody could be sus. So these news stories have people accusing each other because it could be anybody. Even they show them searching a man's house because of an anonymous letter he wrote. But of course, it's not the same anonymous letter. It's something else that he wrote anonymously. And they're like, okay, we have to search your whole house. The police explain that they had to follow every clue they can. A small child asks this man on the street, just a man with glasses on, whatever, what time it was, and these townsfolk confront him like he's the killer.
And this is also a good use of height that would be used from Eons Come, to show, dominance in a situation. You view them, where they're higher up in frame versus lower down in frame.
Oh, absolutely.
This is a pretty great shot. Pretty iconic shot. It's facing down to this innocent man and then facing up the guy is like, why do you need to know where she lives?
Yeah, exactly. And the people it shows the people, they're frustrated with the police because they get this guy who's a pickpocket, they get pickpocket, but they're like, but you're not catching the murderer yet? What are you doing? I mean, they're very frustrated with the police. The police, it shows them.
They're analyzing his fingerprints.
They are, but it's interesting, just by his handwriting, they are completely, figuring him out, supposedly, but they still haven't had any luck.
And they're sending it to multiple people. This is a multi-step, complex process that they're trying to get as much, microscopic detail.
Then the handwriting analyst, he says,
the aforementioned diamond-shaped and swelling sweeps, clearly seen from the word soon, near the bottom. Got that? Yeah. Attest to the strong pathological ecstasy of this sadistic figure. Period.
They still have no clue. They still have no idea.
They're just, endlessly trying to search, for this man. And it's just we need results, okay?
Aber das Resultat, bitte! Das Resultat!
We need to find this man. We need to get this over with.
Right. And then while the handwriting analyst is breaking it down, we get this shot, while he's talking, to get this shot of Peter Lorre as Hans Beckert. We finally see his face, right? And he's looking in the mirror, and he's stretching his face out in this strange kind of bug-eyed frown.
The writing as a whole displays elusive yet unmistakable signs of madness.
It reminded me of a similar scene in Todd Phillips' movie The Joker that came out like a year or two ago. With the character of Arthur Fleck, played by Joaquin Phoenix, he's stretching his mouth out to make it sad or happy. I'll have to show you a clip of that.
There are a lot of parallels between the Joker and him, except he isn't, really laughing. He's compelled.
Yes. The police are searching crime scenes. They search the forest, asylums. They really do come up short. It's like they're running out of ideas, and dissatisfaction among people in the streets is just going to mount. And the officers are doing all they can. They got these guys working on 12-hour shifts.
Even 24-hour shifts.
Yeah, they did find evidence. And I love how they're talking about it. And as they're talking about it, they're showing it, over the, and it's we take that for granted. Oh, that's normal for movies. That's just normal creativity. Nobody did that a lot back then. And so, except for guys like him, like Fritz Lang. So they do find evidence at the scene of the crime, which was a piece of candy paper that had some candy crumbs on it.
And this is just like a minor little thing. Even the smallest detail, they're just like searching in a radius from every candy shop.
And they keep asking people, and they go, no, we haven't seen anybody. So even though that is a good clue, they're barking up the wrong tree. They have volumes full of clues. They're combing the forest, and this is a stupid joke, I know, but I was thinking they've got the dogs out, so I guess these are the guys that let the dogs out. No, okay. So they inspect all the flop houses. I guess homeless shelters would be another way of saying flop houses. And they check every homeless person. It makes a lot of people nervous. They're getting all the railway stations, all the underworld hangouts. They haven't found anything yet.
They're even searching without, warrants.
Warrants? You don't need a warrant. So things hit a boiling point when the police start to shake down the underworld, okay? So they start to sweep in the streets, and they come upon this, like a pub or a speakeasy. It's called the RoccoW, right? And they systematically interrogate everybody in the place.
And they're trying to get their passports and their stuffs.
And that's when we meet Inspector Carl Lohman, who's a big character in this.
Or as the people lovingly call him, Tubby Lohman.
Or Fatty Lohman, yeah. He's there leading the investigation, and unsurprisingly, these people just hate the police. The reason I'm thinking that some of them are criminals there is because some of the stuff they find is like guns and, lots of stuff that you might steal.
Furs, also stuff.
A drill, and equipment that looks like you might get into a safe with it. So that's the hint that safe cracking might be, something that happens later in this movie, which it does, yeah. So the majority of them are detained after that, often on charges that are unrelated to murder. They're just putting out a net and catching whatever they can find. So the lady who runs the place, she's not happy with those raids because they're making a mess of things, and she has this little speech that she gives at the end that hints to where the movie might be heading, or the one thing that it's trying to say. She says,
"If you knew how steamed they are, if the guy who's causing these raids, especially the girls, sure they solicit. Business is business. But believe me, in every one of them beats a mother's heart. I know a lot of crooks who get all teary-eyed just seeing the little ones at play. If they ever catch that man, they'll wring his neck."
So that tells me, okay, there are crooks, and they might be criminals, but when it comes to someone harming a child, they do have a heart, and if they catch him, they'll wring his neck, and that hints that maybe that's what might happen. So then there's a group of these powerful gang members, and they're meeting in kind of like a little apartment, but it's right above the RoccoW. One of the guys is like looking down at the RoccoW, and they're all commenting on it. And we meet two of the characters we meet are, kind of prominent in this criminal group. Mainly this guy named Der Schranker.
Also known as Safecracker.
Yeah. And there's Franz. And there's this, he's kind of a burglar. He's kind of lovable, making silly mistakes. So they discuss the fact that this hunt for the killer is cutting into profits from the criminal enterprises.
Everyone, even the criminals, are just all tired of this dude existing. They're like, we can't make crimes. The police are combing the streets, so we can't do any crimes. We can't, make any money. We can't have fun out there, breaking into stuff. So we just got to get rid of this dude. And we're the ones to do it.
And we got a parallel shot, right? We got contrasting shots.
And this is one of the very masterful things that you can get from this movie is, you have the criminals and they're all smoking in this, dingy area. In the government building, even the government building, it's also full of smoking in a dingy environment where people are yelling at each other angrily and trying to
make plans.
Frequently and vainly solve. Even, all the things, you think of the government, the White House, all that stuff. You think of cleanliness, but this world is not cleanly. It is full of maybe even disease. There could be disease on these streets.
There is a scuzzy kind of appearance to everything.
There's been so much torment in this city.
And neither one of them are completely clean, or they're not completely morally clean on this, and we find that as we go. So Lohman... Inspector Lohman, he suggests that they sweep all the residences of former asylum inmates who may have had a history of violence against children, and any materials that they may have had that may have been used to write letters. And this actually is a good plan, we find later. But Schranker, during the meeting, he suggests something crazier. He decides that it's now become the criminal or the underworld's responsibility to catch the child murderer. The police will never effectively end their investigation, and the profits will dry up. He says,
an outsider is ruining our business and our reputation. Measures taken by the police and the daily raids to catch child murder are hampering our activities to an almost unbearable degree. We can no longer tolerate the fact that we are not safe now in any hotel, cafe, or even private home from the clutches of the police. Very true, hear, hear. The state of affairs must end. Things must go back to normal, or we'll go under. Our reputation is suffering as well. The police seek the murderer in our fold.
And then he says something very interesting, almost echoes some of the fascist statements of the Nazi Party. He says,
but we must draw a firm line between ourselves and this man they're looking for. We conduct our business in order to survive, but this monster has no right to survive. He must be killed, eliminated, exterminated, without mercy or compassion.
So he declares that every street person in the city will be mobilized as a member of a sprawling surveillance unit.
Into this kind of, we're going to use the beggars, turn them into a beggars society, go out like the Pony Express, just try and spy about like the spies who are spying in Canaan.
Sherlock Holmes did that, did he not?
That was with the children. But he was the good guy. These guys, well, they could be seen as good. I mean, and then we come back to the crux of this movie, which is, does this Hans Becker deserve pity for all these terrible, terrible things that he has done?
Fritz Lang does kind of...
does he deserve pity?
Well, he opens your mind to the fact that he might. He might deserve some pity. He does, like I said, Fritz Lang does not excuse what this man does whatsoever, but he does show him as a man. This is not, there may be monstrous things within him, but he's human. And that's something that we have to look at as these people, is that we share something in common with this person. We have a mind, we have a heart, and it may lead us in a dark place, but we have to realize that this person's a human, and so are we, and that's good, and that kind of, it makes it easier. If you think of someone as a complete monster, it's easier to just kill the beast, like you said before, the other day. So even though M came out 2 years before Hitler and the Nazi Party came to real power, Lang knew that a weak government and extreme public unrest can be explosive. what is the worst thing? Okay, a child murder on the prowl or a fearful, bloodthirsty populace?
And they're just absolutely tired and sick of it.
Yeah, and what's the motivation? Justice? Revenge? So we see government officials portrayed as ineffective, and that's what the reputation of the Weimar government in post-World War I was. The government is failing the people. Okay, well, honestly, that statement I just said about the government failing the people, that could be timeless. So Fritz Lang does not make a sympathetic picture of the people in the town. You kind of agree with them. Yes, this murder is bad, but they are really kind of going overboard with how out for blood they are. All the sympathetic characters in this section of the movie are the criminals. So when the police raid the pub, we don't have any hate for them. They're just living their lives, having a good time, and they're getting harassed, right? And it's actually the gang members that are actually making progress, and the police, who are supposedly we're putting everything in the government, we're putting everything in their hands, they're spinning their wheels. So an underworld boss has more influence than a police official. So Schranker oversees the process by which these street people, these beggars or whatever, or homeless people, they're assigned specific parts of the city. One of the first guys is an organ grinder, which is like it's not literal organs, but it's like this music box that you turn. Sometimes they like have a monkey dancing or something like that. I don't know, not in this case. So it's about the same spot that the little girls were doing their song about the killer.
But this time they're not dancing at all to the organ grinder.
Oh, they're not. So Inspector Lohman, the first apartment search doesn't see anything. It shows them spinning their wheels again.
But the beggar society.
It's working.
It is working. They're starting to find him. And then, we get this very, very, very good scene. We get to see this perspective of Hans Beckert, and he's looking at himself in the reflection of a storefront, and then he sees the girl, and he's like, oh, I'm about to kill her. But the thing is, this is the camera moving. This is not him. This is the camera, which is interesting. But then the girl's mother then walks up into view from, going like, oh, child, or something off screen, and then we get her coming in.
Yeah, we're kind of relieved because we're like, oh, thank God.
She's off the table.
But the thing is, though, our blood pressure may have been low earlier, but his is definitely up.
But the thing is, this blind balloon seller, we saw him earlier, and he's blind, but the thing is, he's the actual one who recognizes Hans Beckert's existence when he finds this other girl, and he's buying a balloon for her too, or just passing by, and he goes, wait, it's that dude. I recognize him. He was off with Elsie. And then he tells this other man, and so he's like, oh, he's the murderer. Let's go get him. And so this beggar dude who got told, he puts M in chalk on his hand, and he slaps Hans Beckert's coat. And that is why the movie was named, obviously, that M hand slapped, and he's marked for murder.
Yes, and there's also a part where Hans Beckert has a knife. He drops the knife or something, and the girl hands it back to him, and it looks like he's going to stab her.
But he just peels an orange with it.
Yeah, but the way he cuts that orange is just expertly, and he's slicing it, and you're like, that's how he slices people. Now, as they're walking, the girl notices the M on his shoulder and tries to rub it off.
But the thing is, the beggars now recognize him, and they chase him in this big, epic wide shot of him, like, wandering around, but he's surrounded by them. So he has to run. And from this moment, this is when you feel more pity for Hans Beckert, especially as we get into his perspective.
Yeah, well, you start to, and you're like, the hunter previously is now the prey. And we're like, yeah, we don't want a little girl to get hurt. We want him to get caught. But we're starting to feel those little twinges of maybe something's wrong with him. It's not full on yet. That starts evolving later as we go, as you start, getting a little bit more of him. So a lot of the tension in this is those kind of silent era stuff that Fritz Lang brought into this.
Where he just mutes it into like a wall of silence.
Yes, it's not driven by any dialogue at all. It's these cat and mouse games with glances and men in shadows. Even when Beckert sits down in a cafe, he gets multiple drinks of alcohol because he's trying to, cognac or whatever, he's trying to calm himself down, but he's doing the whistle, and he can't.
He's trying to fight the urges, but the urges come back stronger.
Yeah, and the way that also we're watching him is kind of like a voyeur, because we're not like sitting next to him in his chair. We're like almost like we're watching him from across the street. So it's kind of like that's when we are seeing, like we're spying on him, just like the street people were doing. Lots of shadow invading each other's space. Okay, so now this is right about where the street people have really pushed him into running, and he's got to find someplace. And there's this building with people that work in the building, and they're letting out. They're coming out. They're done with work for the day, and they're coming out. And Hans Beckert's trying to go in to the building and sneak in after it's shut. So once there's word that gets back to the gang that Beckert has disappeared in the office building, they put together an idea to do a heist to get him.
But meanwhile, Inspector Lohman, they have discovered the mahogany table, which was a clue, was actually a mahogany windowsill, and there was red pencil, and they discovered where he was. In fact, they also discovered an Ariston cigarette.
Didn't they also find a candy wrapper in the trash can?
Yeah, and then from this point, there's like a famous scene where he's like, Ariston? And the camera constantly zooms up and up and up on him. And then he's got it. He's figured out the case.
The realization zoom in.
He's connected this to a different case, and now he knows who it is.
The realization zoom in, there is I think my favorite one is the one they do in Jaws. But I need to show you this. When you see this, you're like, yeah, I've seen that a million times. But I need to show you the realization zoom in when we get later on. We get done with this podcast because you need to see this.
So now we're in this thrilling break-in scene. All of the criminals, they're breaking in, right?
They tie up the security guards.
There's a guy with like a jackhammer. He's jackhammering through the top of the building in order to get in. There's a lot of verticality in placement, especially when it's positioned over it. In particular, when the police catch them toward the end of the heist.
Great. The set is
awesome.
Yeah,
and there's
really
like
good.
This big giant stairwell around, which is the main area. It's got ledges, and we have Hans Beckert, and he's trying to run around and hide for his life, and he's picking himself out of the office with like a hairpin and stuff. Oh, with his knife even, I think. Was he picking with his knife?
Yeah, and he ends up in this dark storage area, like an attic, and you see shadows laying over him, and you can almost see the sweat on his face. I mean, he's outnumbered. He's not this scary monster anymore. He's just this scared guy. Now I'm not saying anything that he did was justified or right, but now you see that he's not this this threatening guy anymore. He's being threatened.
Especially when they hear him pick the door, he's just like, oh, now we know where he is, and they're just wrecking the place, axes, battering rams, stuff like that, and they're just like incoming toward this. There's this scene, I really like it, where he's just sitting there and he's like breathing, and there's like, you can hear the noises of them breaking in. There's like
yeah, it's
very, very thrilling, especially
it's getting more and more. You're like, yeah,
especially when you played hide and seek and you could hear people like walking by and opening doors and stuff. That's very creepy, like when you're in a dark room
like that, except they're gonna kill you.
Thing is, they do eventually discover him, and then there's lights on him and he stands up.
Well, first the thing, a complication has occurred. Somebody rolled a critical fumble. So,
and this one criminal dude, he did not have any smarts in his brain really, because he thought the plan was to go to a security guard and go, hey, sound the alarm basically, or something like that, to alert him that there are things going on.
Yeah, and of course it's, oh man, it's Franz. The only other guy that they really mention in this, the heist team, other than DeShrunker. And so he goes down through this hole that he was supposed to open, and everybody's gone. And so by the time the police get there, they just take Franz in. So, and the interesting thing is we get these reversing contrasting issues. So Shrunker was a criminal, Now he's in a police uniform. So now...
You know, before he was the person you're empathizing with in order to catch Hans Beckert, but by this time you've already switched to Hans Beckert's role, and you empathize with him, and you're in his role, in his shoes, and you realize, oh, they're actually the bad guys here. Everyone's a bad guy here. Everyone's against each other. So who do we sympathize with? Who gets the celebration at the end from us? Which team are you on? If red team wins, are you on green team, red team, yellow team, or blue team, or purple team? Who knows?
Are you on team DeShrunker, or are you team Beckert? So the architecture, to me, was very trapping and claustrophobic. So like you said, when he was in the storage area, I felt like I was trapped too. Are we going to sympathize with a child murderer, though? I don't think so. So we're not supposed to like or forgive him just because he's portrayed like a caged animal. But through his fear, we get, like I said before, we get to see him as a person, a human. So this is interesting. Fritz Lang seems like he's telling us that no person is ever thought of as less than a person. So when you say someone's a monster or beast,
then just tell them a person's a person, no matter how small.
No matter how small. Yeah, there we go. So back at the police station, what a dummy. Yeah, I'm not saying a dummy. He just kind of got the worst look ever. Inspector Lohman is interrogating Franz to find out why he was there at the break-in. Nothing was stolen, right? So they're like, well, this was a failed break-in then. But Lohman kind of knows Franz a little bit, so he knows if there's anything that Franz doesn't like, it's somebody dying when they don't have to.
But he eventually gets the information out of Franz through this,
He lies, though. He lies. He says that one of the security guards was shot and killed, and he's like, "No, we were just trying to, to trap the child murderer." And this is okay. Lohman at first, he was just like, "I'm just trying to stop a heist." Wait a minute, what? So, miracle of miracles, he actually, because Franz panicked and said that, he actually helped him crack the case. So it still shows that the police officials and the government officials are hapless. They just tripped into the solution. Okay, so here's the end sequence, and it's a doozy. Okay,
it is very masterfully good,
and we are gonna definitely
have a clip for this, but
we're going to have the clips for these. So the gang has brought Hans Beckert to the cellar of an abandoned distillery. And this is not where they are going to hold him up, like just chain him up. No. This is where they're going to try him in a mock trial, or like a mob law trial.
Yeah, he's been running out of this place, and he opens up the door. But then he just comes against this huge amount of people all just staring at him. And in the middle is the safecracker DeShrunker, and he's just crossed his arms, and they're all just staring at him. And
there are mothers, there are fathers, there are regular people from the town. This is not just, it's a bunch of criminals. No.
This is everyone who is affected by him. Everyone who is affected by him being at that town or even existing.
And strangely enough, they even have him a court-assigned defense attorney. And this guy, actually, he's the only thing standing in the way.
He's like, I'm the one that's supposed to be protecting you.
Vengeance, right. So it's clear that Schranker has no interest in conducting a fair trial. The defense attorney, realizes that, and he demands that Beckert get turned over to the police so he can face a fair trial.
But everyone's just laughing at his defendant.
Yeah, that's everybody. He says that's everybody's right. Like that's a basic right that everybody in America has according to the Constitution.
You spoke of right just now. We will be your right. Everyone sitting here is an expert in the rule of law. From 6 weeks in Tegel to 15 years in Brandenburg. They'll make sure you get your rights.
So, Schranker and the jury argue that Beckert gave up his right to a fair trial when he started murdering children. Everybody gets a fair trial even if you do murder children. That's kind of a basic thing. But the thing is...
This is a kangaroo court. There is no fair here. There is this dude. We are not going to have any pity for him. This guy gotta go.
They're thinking if we just deem him insane, then they'll send him to a mental institution.
And then he'll come back, and then he'll repeat it all over again. The boy cried wolf. kind of situation. You know, if he cries wolf and he gets, you know, told off to be like, oh, we'll forgive you, release you out back into the fields. This time they're at the last cry of wolf. Or there won't even be a first time, is what their thing is.
Beckert does not say that he doesn't have an unsound mind. He doesn't say, oh, I'm not insane. He kind of proves that something is going on in his mind. He's basically should not be tried as a sane man. He goes through this gut-wrenching monologue about these two men inside of him.
And we will play this in full here. You must be taken out of action. You must go. But I can't help it. I can't help it. I can't. I really just can't help it. We all know that one. For the judge, we all can't help it. What would you know? What are you talking about? Who are you anyway? Who are you? All of you. Criminals. Probably proud of it too. Proud you can crack a safe or sneak into houses or cheat at cards. All of which seems to me just as easily give up. If you've learned something useful, if you had jobs, or if you weren't just some lazy pigs. But me? Can I do anything about it? Don't I have this cursed thing inside of me? This fire, this voice, this agony. So you mean to say, you have to kill? I have to roam the streets endlessly, always sensing that someone's following me. It's me. I'm shadowing myself. Silently. But I still hear it. Yes. Sometimes I feel like I'm tracking myself down. I want to run. Run away from myself. But I can't. I can't escape from myself. I must take the path that is driving me down. And run down endless streets. I want off. I want off. And with me run the ghosts of the mothers and the children. They never go away. They're always there. Always. Always. Except when I'm doing it. When I... Oh, but then I don't remember a thing. Then I'm standing before a poster, reading what I've done, and I read. I did that? I don't remember a thing. But who will believe me? Who knows what it's like inside of me? How it screams and cries out inside of me when I have to do it. Don't want to. Must. Don't want to. Must. And then a voice cries out. So I can't listen anymore. Help. I can't. I can't. I can't.
The crux of Beckert's self-defense is that he deserves pity because he can't control his actions, unlike the people in the jury who chose the criminal lifestyle over the law-abiding one. So he's kind of like starting to bring them into it and go, okay, yeah, but you. And he's pointing it back at them a little bit. Well, they are having none of it. And they're saying, okay, we're just going to sentence you to death. So then Schrenker says something that sounds very much like the Nazis, like the fascist world that Fritz Lang is trying to call to attention. He says,
the accused has stated that he can't help himself. In other words, he must commit murder. With that, he's pronounced his own death sentence. Yes, correct, yes. A man who claims that he is compelled to destroy the lives of others
Dieser Mensch muss
Such a man must
ausgelöscht
be
werden wie ein
extinguished like a
Schafeuer.
bonfire.
Dieser Mensch
Such a
muss
man
ausgerottet
must be
werden.
obliterated,
Dieser Mensch muss
wiped
weg.
out. And they all just start pouncing on him. But in this penultimate scene, they just stop. You don't know why at first, but they just stop right after running. And then they slowly put their hands up. You don't even see the police. You're not even supposed to see the police. If there's some weird version, they show the police. But I think the English dub actually shows the police somehow. I don't know. I haven't seen a clean copy of the English dub. Obviously, you don't.
The English dub kind of I hate to say this, but many times the English dub takes the intelligence of the actual film that it's trying to create some kind of copy of, or it kind of dumbs it down and goes, well, you won't understand that the police are here, so we'll just show them for you.
But that's the whole point of this. You just see them raising their hands because you know they're there, and that's just why it's so masterful.
I like that. And many times seeing the original and not the copy. There's sometimes though there have been remakes and copies that are actually honestly that are better than the original. And I don't know. We'd have to, maybe that's a blog post for another time about originals, remakes that are better than the originals and better done.
But nothing is better than this very final scene. You get, they're in the trial course, and it says, today we are here at this trial. But he doesn't continue. At least he's not supposed to. Maybe they continue this in the English version. We can never know. But I don't think so. I don't care. It stops right there. And then we get the three women. They're just sobbing in the middle. She's
One of them
going,
is Mrs. Beckman.
Yeah, Mrs. Beckman. She's like, you must know. You must take care of the children. All of you. And that's how it just ends. It literally just ends like that. It just ends? It really just ends. Okay.
No credits.
There's not even any credits. And just, you don't even see the court trial. There's no conclusion. No. All you get is take care of your children.
The conclusion is discussion.
It's an open ending as compared to a closed ending, which would be like 98% of all of it, which is something I really like about this movie. Another thing is just the world building. I say world because this honestly feels like an encapsulated ecosystem. It's like a completely different world than our own, but to each their own.
It is. It may seem that way, but it is our own world. Everything that's in this movie are I can find parallels in our world, except for the fact that Fritz Lang is trying. It looks like he's trying to make an allegory for Weimar Germany of post World War I. So,
and from then you can just see, especially in this movie, the bleakness. It's oppressive. It's bleak. The shadows, the thick smoking everywhere. Everybody's smoking here. It's kind of, it's kind of like the style of noir, but instead of, the snappy confidence and the jazz music, this film lingers on underlying doubt and dread.
You would actually be surprised in actual film noir. It's not as snappy. It's not as jazzy as you might think.
But do you get a vacuum of hopelessness, as in is this movie?
When you have a society, when you have a society where faith in the law has collapsed, then there's a power vacuum. Okay, so and then so you get, instead of a justice, you get a taste for blood, you see where the law is breaking down. And you see why the criminals were, compelled to take these matters into their own hands. And the cops couldn't even recognize a good lead when it fell into their laps, and they stumbled into it. So it shows that a breakdown of government.
And then especially if you get the information that Peter Lorre for this final scene. There's like a small little bit of it where he's being chucked down he falls down the stairs, but Fritz Lang is actually chucking him down the stairs, probably like at least 100 times, and he's just to the point that he's just screaming, "Please stop!" So that he gets this raw performance, because that's honestly what he's supposed to be feeling is "Please stop."
I'm of two different minds on that. I think that some directors, like I mentioned in the production part, mentioned about the movie The Shining. I think or some different films like that. I talked about Akira Kurosawa would shoot real arrows at people during certain scenes. I mean, it in a way, I don't agree with the methods, but
I don't really think Peter Lorre really worked with Fritz Lang ever again, but you just the power and the desperation against this crowd of people.
I'm not sure if Peter Lorre has ever been as good. I've seen him in other things, and he's good. No, he's good. You know, I've seen him in The Man Who Knew Too Much. I've seen him in the 39 Steps and some other movies, and we're going to see him on this podcast in The Invisible Agent, and he does well, but yeah, and also Maltese Falcon, yeah. But this is I haven't seen him do anything as raw and as gut wrenching a performance as this. The other ones are more subtle. They're good. But this is like, you know, this is just real, and like I said, you know, it comes from the gut. You know, he's really coming, you know, it's just you have to see it to understand.
And to close this episode off, what is your favorite scene from a cinematography standpoint?
Oh wow.
Obviously, other than the final scene.
The final scene sticks with me a lot, but I think the scenes that stick with me are them when they move through the streets, going after him, and when he's, you know, going after Beckert, and when they chase him into the building and the interplay of shadows.
But a scene that I note though is the deli scene. You know, they're in this deli, but the thing is, the camera is like using this long shot,
long zoom in, yeah,
and it's like focusing on all the tables at what people are doing. You know, playing poker, maybe eating sausages
through them,
and it's like it's acting like it's a real character in this, observing. And honestly,
but it's going through the table.
They went, you know, we were talking about in Jekyll and Hyde. They're like, okay, Unchained Camera, what can we do with this? And they did some things with it, but this movie did a ton more things with it. That's why we say this is one of the best films of all time, best film in Germany, as compared to Jekyll and Hyde. Jekyll and Hyde's great, but nothing really does compare.
I would agree, but Jekyll and Hyde, I think, has elements in it that I would say are very influential. There's different elements. I have a hard time picking out what is, you know, now, great film. Yes, I would never say that something is greatest of all time, but I'd say if there was a movie that I couldn't see any flaws in, I mean, it's not even overly long. Everything in it is built to say what Fritz Lang wants to say, and I don't see any flaws in it. It does what he wants it to do. It says what he wants it to say, in expert ways.
This would be Fritz Lang's masterpiece.
I would say if we found a copy of Metropolis that was absolutely restored and had like 4K from top to bottom in every frame, we might see that's a master class in terms of for different reasons. But this movie here, we have excellent copies of it. And, you know, we know exactly what he was trying to show in every frame because we can see it in quality. And I'd have to say, yeah, I mean, but I have a hard time saying if something is the greatest film of all time or putting in things as a top 10 in any kind of order. You know, like another movie that we're going to be talking about soon is Citizen Kane. And I believe that if you look at a movie that's expertly done from top to bottom, and as you watch it further, you see more things in it, especially the skill of cinematography, placement of the camera, you know, what they focus on. That's what makes these films really great, I think, is what they capture with their cameras. But I also think that M is one of the greats. If you were to say a great film, I would say M would be, definitely. And it's worth seeing. It's worth finding a copy of it. I'm sure you can find a copy of it if you try. And like William said before, you know, do not see the dubbed version. Don't see any remakes. See the original that Fritz Lang wanted. See it in German with subtitles, and just absorb it. See if you see what Fritz Lang is trying to show you. And what he puts in front of the camera is very important. What how he wants you to see things.
And I guess we could leave it on that.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
again, join us next time for Citizen Kane, and we will be off.
Don't forget to open your third eye and telepathically message us at cinefanpod@gmail.com. Set your chronoscope dial to the future setting and peruse cinematicfanpodcast.wordpress.com. Hunker over your ham radio as your keen ears listen for the ghostly voices tweeting on our Twitter @CinematicFanta1. Exchange all of your money into Republic credits and donate at our Patreon page at patreon.com/cinefanpodcast. Ending transmission now.